Hey guys, welcome back to remote teaching after April vacation. Honestly, the best. I miss you guys and I wish I was teaching to you, but this is how we got to do it. I'll flex the Apple Pencil all I want. So, first, you guys, we're going to finish up hopefully Unit 9 pretty soon. So, you have Unit 9 Day 5 notes. Um, and it's talking about the domain and range of a function. So you have to name the domain and range. So recall that the domain is the x coordinates on a graph and the range is the y coordinates on a graph. So what you're going to do is you're going to use your previous learning from the Unit 9 Day 4 and you're going to write the domain and range using what is called interval notation. Okay, so remember that interval notation is when you use the brackets and the parentheses separated by a comma, and you're just listing where they go. So let's look at what we have. So for the domain, we're talking about the x values. So remember the x values are the values going from left to right on our axis. Now, since the leftmost point is a closed circle, that means we're going to use a bracket for interval notation. And then since the rightmost point is an open circle, that means we're going to use a parentheses. So when I'm talking about the domain, I'm giving the x value. So I'm going to put a bracket for the domain, and the x is value that it's at is -5. Comma, and the parentheses value, x value that is at is +5, and I'm going to close it with the parentheses, and that's the domain of the function. Now, when you're looking at the range of the function, remember we're talking about the y value, so you're talking about this distance here going up and down. So we're going to start at the lower point when we're doing our intervals. So the lowest point in the up and down one is at -3 on the y value, and it is a closed circle. So we're going to do a bracket -3, comma, and then the highest point there is an open circle, and it is at 4 on the y-axis. So I'm just going to put 4 and close it with a parentheses. Okay, so let's try another example of domain and range using interval notation. So again, remember the domain is going from left to right on the x-axis, and you have to give the x values. So if I'm going from left to right, notice I'm going to start here with a parentheses because it is an open circle, and then I'm going to end with a bracket because of the closed circle. So I open up with parentheses, and that x value is at -4, comma, and the x value ends at 3, and I'm going to close it with a bracket because it is a filled in circle, and that's the domain. Range is up and down, so we're going to start at the bottom, and the bottommost point here is this closed dot, and that closed dot is at -3, so I'm going to do a bracket and a -3, comma, and then the highest point is at the open dot, which is at 4 on the y-axis, and I'm going to close it with a parentheses. So remember that to pay attention to the y values and the x values when you're doing domain and range. And the last topic that you have on the Unit 9 Day 5 notes is talking about the different types of functions where functions can rise, fall, and stay constant on a single graph. So there are 3 different types of functions that you have to be able to identify from a graph. The first one is called, I'm going to do it in blue, an increasing function. So an increasing function goes up goes up or rises from left to right. The next one is falling from left to right, so that is called a decreasing function. So a decreasing function falls from left to right, going down. And then the last one doesn't, the last one I'm going to do in yellow, and this one does not change, and that is called a constant function. So a constant function does not change. It just goes straight across, no changing going on there. So you got increasing, decreasing, and constant. Now, when we have to state where a function is increasing, decreasing, or constant, which is what you're going to have to do in ALEKS, we use interval notation. keep that in mind, which is what we just did on the last one. So we use interval notation, and we only identify the x coordinates. So that's important. And another important piece is that you always use parentheses. So we're only going to use parentheses, we're never going to use brackets, and we're only going to name the x coordinates. All right, so let's try it out. So first, what I'm going to do in our first picture, or our first example, is I'm going to highlight where it is increasing, decreasing, and constant, okay? So with my colors. So increasing, I'm going to say is blue, okay? And the only part where I see this function is going up from left to right is right there. And then I'm going to highlight the decreasing ones, and there are two parts where this function is decreasing. It is decreasing right here from left to right, and it is falling right here from left to right as well. And then I'm going to identify in yellow what the constant the constants are for this function, and that's where it goes straight across here and straight across here. So now you're going to identify, again, using the interval notation, only parentheses, and naming the x values, okay? So the function is increasing on the interval, so I'm going to say parentheses. The increasing is the one in blue. So it starts at 0 on the x-axis, and it goes to 2 on the x-axis. So I'd say 0 to 2 is where the function is increasing. The function is decreasing on the intervals of, so now I'm going to do two separate parentheses, okay, because there are two separate times where it is decreasing. The first time it's at -5 on the x-axis, comma, and it ends at -1 on the x-axis. And the second time that the function is decreasing is at 2 on the x-axis and going down, and 5 on the x-axis as well. So there's the intervals where it is decreasing. And then the two intervals where it is constant, again, we're going to have two sets of parentheses here. So it's constant on the x-axis, it starts at -7 and then goes to -5. And on the x-axis, it starts at -1 and goes to 0. Okay, so that's all you're doing. You're listing them where they're increasing, decreasing, or constant. So last one, here's an example for you to do. Again, I'm going to highlight what's increasing, decreasing, and constant. So on this graph, there happens to be two that are increasing. It's going up from left to right here. It's also going up from left to right there. And then there's one decreasing. It's going down here. And there are two constants where it goes across and straight across here. So from there, you're going to say the interval on which the function is increasing would be parentheses. There are two of them, so I'm going to open up two sets of parentheses. And again, the x values. So we start -7, and then it goes to -5. And then the next one is 0 on the x-axis to 2, and that's where the function is increasing. Decreasing, there's only one set of parentheses where it is decreasing, and it starts at -5, where it starts to go down, and it ends at -1 on the x-axis. And then where it is constant, there are two sets here. So it is constant from -1 to 0 on the x-axis and from 2 to 5 on the x-axis. And that's all you gotta do for that one. All right, let me know if you have any questions. Good luck.